Anyone can be arrogant. There are 1,000 silly reasons that we can use to put ourselves above other people. It's part of the human condition, and Christians are human. So we find Christian things to be arrogant about. Screwtape's 24th letter is about spiritual pride.
I have been in correspondence with Slumtrippet, who is in charge of your patient's young woman, and begin to see the chink in her armor. It is an unobtrusive little vice which she shares with nearly all women who have grown up in an intelligent circle, united by clearly defined belief. And it consists in a quite untroubled assumption that the outsiders who do not share this belief are really too stupid and ridiculous.
Those who have been raised in Christian homes could have the tendency to think of those who are not Christian as inferior in various ways. How can they think that? That's just silly. And if we notice ourselves doing that, we just tell ourselves that the attitude is part of our faith. This tendency can be true about people who don't regularly rub shoulders with unbelievers.
The males who habitually meet these outsiders do not feel that way. Their confidence, if they are confident, is of a different kind. Hers, which she supposes to be due to faith, is in reality largely due to the mere color that she has taken from her surroundings. It is not in fact very different from the conviction she would have felt at the age of 10 that the kind of fish knives used in her father's house were the proper or normal or real kind, while those of the neighboring families were not real fish knives at all.
When we are raised with something, we will often quite naturally see it as normal, or good, or the best, or even the only, like a knife. I actually have a cheese knife from my parents. It's the best because it's the one I was raised with. And it cuts cheese better than any knife on the planet. The knife thing is analogous to what is experienced as one's household faith. Unfortunately for the devils, not much use can be made of the girl's ignorance or naivete, but Wormwood may be able to use it to influence his patient.
It is always the novice who exaggerates. The man who has risen in society is over-refined, the young scholar is pedantic. In this new circle, your patient is a novice. He is there daily meeting Christian life of a quality he never before imagined, and seeing it all through an enchanted glass because he is in love. He is anxious, indeed the enemy commands him, to imitate this quality. Can you get him to imitate this defect in the mistress, and to exaggerate it, until what is venial in her bosom, in him the strongest and most beautiful of vices, spiritual pride?
The patient will naturally try to imitate the way the girl and her family do Christianity. God wants us to imitate. Remember that earlier letter, where Screwtape says that we become what we pretend to be. But because the patient is a novice, he's not discerning enough to not imitate that one tiny fault in the girl. In her, it's a small thing, but in him, it could be made into something much bigger. Screwtape gets a little excited while he explains the possibilities of this kind of attack.
The conditions seem ideally favorable. The new circle in which he finds himself is one of which he is tempted to be proud for many reasons other than its Christianity. It is a better educated, more intelligent, more agreeable society than any he has yet encountered. He is also under some degree of illusion as to his own place in it. Under the influence of love, he may still think himself unworthy of the girl, but he is rapidly ceasing to think himself unworthy of the others. He has no notion how much in him is forgiven because they are charitable, and made the best of because he is now one of the family.
Wormwood's patient is slowly coming to think that he belongs with these people on his own merits, when he's really being welcomed into the family because the family is gracious and charitable. They know him for what he is, but he does not.
He does not dream how much of his conversation, how many of his opinions, are recognized by them as mere echoes of their own. Still less does he suspect how much of the delight he takes in these people is due to the erotic enchantment which the girl, for him, spreads over all her surroundings. He thinks that he likes their talk and way of life because of some congruity between their spiritual state and his, when in fact they are so far beyond him that if he were not in love, he would be merely puzzled and repelled by much which he now accepts. He is like a dog, which should imagine it understood firearms, because his hunting instinct and love for his master enable it to enjoy a day's shooting.
The patient is in over his head, out of his depth, punching above his weight, flying too close to the sun, and he doesn't even know it. Isn't Lewis's analogy so much fresher and better than mine? He's a bird dog who thinks he understands guns.
Here is your chance. While the enemy, by means of sexual love, and some very agreeable people far advanced in his service, is drawing the young barbarian up to levels he could never otherwise have achieved, you must make him feel that he is finding his own level, that these people are his sort. and that coming among them, he has come home. When he turns from them to other society, he will find it dull, partly because almost any society within his reach is, in fact, much less entertaining, but still more because he will miss the enchantment of the young woman.
God is using physical attraction and her family to draw the young man up. We don't usually think of God using things like our desires for his purposes, do we? We think of it as a temptation thing. We need to remember that God is behind everything. And we also probably think that we are in the middle of such godly circumstances that the devils can't get at us. Think again. Wormwood is to use against him the difference between the patient's former associations and the super Christians he's now hanging with.
You must teach him to mistake this contrast between the circle that delights and the circle that bores him for the contrast between Christians and unbelievers. He must be made to feel, he better not put it into words, how different we Christians are. And by we Christians, he must really, but unknowingly mean my set. And by my set, he must mean not the people who, in their charity and humility, have accepted me, but the people with whom I associate by right.
Once again, the forces of hell are not using logic and reason to pull us away from the fantasy of a moral and spiritual reality. Their strategy is to muddle our thinking.
Success here depends on confusing him. If you try to make him explicitly and professedly proud of being a Christian, you will probably fail. The enemy's warnings are too well known. If, on the other hand, you let the idea of we Christians drop out altogether and merely make him complacent about his set, you will produce not true spiritual pride, but mere social vanity, which by comparison is a trumpery, puny little sin.
The Bible has a lot to say about spiritual pride, so relying on that is prone to failure. Wormwood has to walk a fine line here. He can't push the pride thing too hard, but if he doesn't push it hard enough, it will produce only vanity, and not pride. Vanity isn't enough.
What you want is to keep a sly self-congratulation mixed in with all his thoughts, and never allow him to raise the question, what precisely am I congratulating myself about? The idea of belonging to an inner ring, of being in a secret, is very sweet to him. Play on that nerve. Teach him, using the influence of this girl when she is silliest, to adopt an air of amusement at the things that the unbelievers say.
Lewis wrote an essay called The Inner Ring, in which he describes the inner ring as an exclusive group or clique that people desire to be a part of, not necessarily for any noble reason, but for the mere sake of belonging to an exclusive group. This is the impulse that Screwtape would have Wormwood exploit.
Some theories which he may meet in modern Christian circles may here prove helpful. Theories, I mean, that place the hope of society in some inner ring of clerks, some trained minority of theocrats. It is no affair of yours whether those theories are true or false. The great thing is to make Christianity a mystery religion in which he feels himself one of the initiates.
Screwtape ends the letter with some stern words. Apparently Wormwood is a little too excited about the war. This clearly shows that the devils do not concern themselves with the same things that we do.
Pray do not fill your letters with rubbish about this European war. Its final issue is no doubt important, but that is a matter for the High Command. I am not in the least interested in knowing how many people in England have been killed by bombs. In what state of mind they died, I can learn from the office at this end. That they were going to die sometime, I already knew. Please keep your mind on your work.
There are some current events that take up a lot of our attention, but these things that we take to be battles of ultimate good and evil are not relevant to the vast majority of the minions of hell, and neither are they of very much interest to the forces of heaven. Heaven and hell are primarily interested in what's going on in the hearts and the minds of the people. Perhaps we should be attending to those things a little more. In the next letter, Screwtape advises Wormwood to exploit the human tendency towards novelty and change to distract the patient from spiritual truths. Thank you, and we'll see you there.